In the current world, seasonal changes aren't very distinct. They can generally be divided into the rainy season and the dry season. As the name implies, the rainy season is when it frequently rains. Their camp was established in this forest. To the southeast lay a series of rolling hills, with several small streams flowing down from the mountains, converging into a river. One of these small branches flowed near the camp. This was their water source. Though the camp was a good distance from the hills, and they didn't need to worry about mudslides or flash floods, that didn't mean the camp was entirely safe. The first issue was managing the accumulated water. Though the current rain could still be completely absorbed by the soil, there was a limit. They lived in hollowed-out large dead trees, and if the rain became too heavy, it would definitely flood their tree dwellings, making it difficult to live there. It wasn't that they didn't want to build their own houses, it was simply impossible. Setting aside the issue of architectural design, the crucial point was that they had no way to process materials. No metal tools had survived to their era. How could they saw through those massive trees? The second issue was the supply of provisions. Once a heavy rain started, they couldn't go out to gather food and would have to rely on stored supplies. Who knew how long the rainy season would last? 1 or 2 days would be fine, but continuous rain would deplete their resources. Excessive moisture would also be detrimental to many stored items, causing them to mold. Listening to the doctor's grim predictions, Lu Xinrui couldn't help but ask, "Can't we gather food in the rain? What happens if you get sick from being out in the rain?" The doctor retorted. Lu Xinrui was stumped, not knowing if it was because a doctor, who should be curing illnesses, was asking her, "What if you get sick?" Seeing her expression, the doctor knew what she was thinking. He was silent for a moment, then said slowly, "It's best not to pin too much hope on me." "What do you mean?" Lu Xinrui didn't understand. The doctor sighed and asked, "Do you think I'm some miraculous doctor who can cure all diseases?" Seeing her still confused, the doctor began to explain. "Before I woke up, I was just 25. A recent graduate from the National Medical University, working as a junior surgical intern at a private hospital. To be honest, my knowledge outside of surgery is quite limited. And the skills I do have, suturing, bandaging, performing dissections, can't be executed here without proper conditions. And even a common cold, while I might know which medicines could treat it, there are no such medicines here in this place. Even a minor illness can be fatal." Lu Xinrui looked at him with a new understanding. The doctor indeed seemed very young and inexperienced. Her grandfather was a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and she knew that even within TCM, there were various specializations, although they could treat many diseases. Each practitioner had their strengths and weaknesses. Western medicine, with its more detailed divisions, was even more specialized. This wasn't a fantasy novel where a 25-year-old doctor could cure everything. Moreover, a skilled doctor needs the right tools: surgical lamps, scalpels, sutures, various medications, tests. None of these were available here. Even a miraculous doctor couldn't treat patients without the necessary equipment. Until now, Lu Xinrui hadn't considered this. The doctor was the only one responsible for medical work in the camp, so she assumed he was omnipotent without deeply thinking about what he could actually do. This wasn't the old world, where there were countless doctors to choose from, and specialists for every condition. They had no such choices here. Surprised, the doctor looked at her with a mocking smile. "In reality, my job is much like the priest's. It's about giving you peace of mind. I can only bandage wounds when you're injured." As he spoke, a hint of fear and uncertainty about the future appeared in his expression, and Lu Xinrui suddenly realized she wasn't the only one affected by the priest's death yesterday. The doctor, Yanzi, the leader, Eagle Eye, the merchant, the concubine. How could anyone remain unmoved by seeing someone they knew die in front of them? But most of them hid this turmoil because they couldn't stop. Stopping would mean ending up like the priest. The doctor, as he said, existed in the camp much like the priest. The priest's suicide had deeply shaken him. The doctor's point was clear. Both he and the priest were there to provide comfort, to prevent despair. Often, he couldn't save anyone. His daily work involved checking the bodies of those who hadn't yet awakened and the newly awakened, then dealing with various issues in the camp. Serious injuries among hunting team members, minor injuries among others, food poisoning, colds, various infections. While he could provide emergency treatment for wounds, in most cases he was helpless, giving them harmless but ineffective fruit to eat, claiming it was a miracle cure. In reality, this was a form of psychological treatment. Those who survived praised his medical skills, while those who didn't survive died thinking their bodies weren't strong enough, unable to reveal the deceit. I understand how the priest felt as I do these daily checks on the newly awakened. It's actually meaningless. Even if I found a problem, I couldn't cure it, the doctor said with a strange smile. Though you call me a doctor, I'm a doctor who can't save any patients. Actually, many more people than just you three woke up. Do you know why it took the leader 5 days to tell you the truth? Because I was observing, the newly awakened are most vulnerable to infection. Apart from you three, most others died from infections. I could only watch them die. They hoped I could save them from these minor illnesses, which in the past might have been cured with a single fever pill or an antibiotic. But I had no way to treat them, so I kept lying, telling them I could cure them. The doctor took a deep breath and suddenly shouted. I gave them hope, but it was false hope. They left this world in utter despair. Lu Xinrui felt a sudden panic. From the doctor, she sensed the same feeling she got from the priest yesterday. The feeling of beginning to question one's existence. Heading towards self-destruction, she desperately hoped Yanzi would come back and talk to the doctor, but the torrential rain dashed that hope. No one would venture out in this rain. The downpour seemed to isolate her and the doctor from the world. No one else could pull the doctor back. Then why don't you help him? A voice suddenly emerged in her mind. Why don't you help him? You're here now, and only you can do it, so why not reach out to him? Yes, I decided not to always rely on Yanzi, so why not help him myself? Right now. Only I can help him. Lu Xinrui took a deep breath, feeling unexpectedly calm. No, at least you saved me. Lu Xinrui's voice echoed in the rain-isolated treehouse. You saved me. What you've done isn't meaningless. At that time, I didn't even have the strength to open my eyes. If you hadn't checked on me and noticed I was awake, I might have died there from weakness and inability to eat. The doctor, still looking out at the rain, didn't react, but Lu Xinrui knew he heard her. Her voice, initially tinged with fear, grew firm. I don't know how many people you've seen die from untreated illnesses, but you saved me. You're my savior. Without you, I wouldn't be alive, wouldn't be standing here. Silence lingered for a long time before the doctor finally spoke softly. If it wasn't me, Yanzi would have discovered you were awake. But the fact is, you saved me. After a while, the doctor exhaled deeply and smiled. Sorry, I got too worked up and emotional. I shouldn't have burdened you with this. Lu Xinrui knew that, at least for now, the doctor should be okay. But she also realized this wasn't a response of relief, but one of suppressing his emotions, unwilling to show them in front of others. She felt a bit disappointed but said nothing. Ultimately, she and the doctor were merely acquaintances, just a patient and a doctor. The content of her words wasn't as important as who was saying them. The doctor confided in her because they weren't close. Her advice might touch him momentarily but couldn't truly reach his heart. This left Lu Xinrui feeling somewhat powerless, but she understood she couldn't save everyone. She could only hope the concubine could help him resolve his issues. Otherwise, this ticking time bomb would eventually explode.